Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. I'm Danny Flores, your host, and today's honored guest is Bill Fisher, zooming in from Laguna Niguel. Bill's journey began in electronics in 1979 in the electronic distribution market, where he specialized in selling electronic components. In 1986, he transitioned into representing manufacturers, establishing a manufacturers rep organization focused on printed circuit boards, PCBs, and contract assembly. He was amongst the first in the country to introduce PCB manufacturing from Asia, starting in Hong Kong. In the early 2000s, he worked closely with one of the founders of that PCB manufacturer, serving as Vice President of Business Development for the U.S. This experience eventually led him to launch his own company, Vizio Automotive International.
It's actually pronounced Amasia.
Amasia.
Yeah, it's
Got
a
it.
combination of America and Asia. Amasia.
All right. Amasia Automotive International, where he designed, built, imported, and distributed a line of neighborhood electric vehicles from China. His career has spanned multiple industries, requiring adaptability and expertise in various disciplines. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Danny.
That's amazing. Working with this from the beginning. So tell us while we were talking, and so tell us how life began from you and how you ended up doing this and what you're doing now.
Well, I never dreamed that I would end up in the life that I've had, to be honest. I grew up poor in Detroit, from a family of 8 kids, and I never even left Detroit until I joined the Marine Corps when I was 21 years old. So it was quite a, I would say, journey to get to where I've been to this point. I started in electronics and distribution, as you noted, and in Detroit. And one of my bosses, and I did very well with that company. Within a year, I became the corporation's second leading salesman. My boss quit and moved to a company out here in Orange County, Avnet Electronics. And he called me on the phone. It was just before winter time. And he said, "Hey, I got a job for you. Why don't you come out and see me?" And I promptly told him to go to hell because I was doing so well. I didn't want to give that up. And I had a great income. I had a great life going. But that cold always bothered me after I got out of the Marine Corps, because in the Marine Corps, I spent all my time in Southern California. And I decided to go out and at least talk to him.
Right.
So from there, I became a sales manager for Avnet Electronics. During that time, I met a gentleman who was buying parts from me and from one of my salespeople and shipping them over to China because there was a shortage of components, or over to Hong Kong at the time. And eventually he talked me into quitting and joining him to help find short components and sell them into Asia. And I did that for about a week with him until I decided that they were doing things over there in Asia that we could bring back here. And that was printed circuit boards. One of his customers was a company called Elec and Eltec. And I eventually turned that into a very successful business. And I represented printed circuit board makers in China solely for many years. Eventually hired my wife to work with me. I had somebody working for me I had to let go who didn't do anything. I told my wife I was going to hire somebody else, and she asked how much they were going to get paid. And when she found out it was more than she was making, she said, "Well, why don't you hire me?" So I hired my wife, and I think it was back in around 2000. I was getting pretty tired of doing the printed circuit boards, and she said, "Why don't you let me run it? You go try and do something else." Well, at that time, the guy that owned Elec and Eltec, he sold the company, or his share of the company, for about $135 million, wanted to start a trading company in the U.S. So he asked me if I would become his VP of business development in the United States. and I agreed to do that. We didn't know what we were going to trade, so I went over to Hong Kong and met up with him. He had his two sons working for him, and we schlepped ourselves all over China, where I had probably the biggest miss in my whole life. And when I say miss, it was huge. It was big enough to make me quit working for him. Well, as we're going through China, and I have to say, when you're working for a trading company, the thing that you want to do is you want to know what is the next big thing coming and get in front of it. So I'm schlepping around China with his two sons, and I find this company that is making flat screen TV, just the screens, not a whole television. But they wanted to get into the television business, making flat screen TVs. At the time, the biggest thing going was a projector TV, the big projector.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the three lights.
Yeah, I think they call it DSIP or something like that. Anyway, so I built up a whole business plan to help this company become a television manufacturer in the United States and distribute their product to US. I worked with some big appliance companies. I worked with GE for service. I had a whole business plan built up, and I presented it to the owner of that used to own Elec and Eltec, who was now my boss, who hired me to be his VP of business development, and he rejected the idea. I was heartbroken because I knew I had something big. That company today is Vizio, and I'd be worth a couple $100 million at least, if not way more than that. So that was
so let me ask. So then he
miss of my life.
rejected it. Yes, exactly. So he rejected it, and you didn't think of, you know what, if he can reject it, I'm going to go out on my own and do this.
You know, I would have had to find somebody to invest in it,
VCs,
investors.
okay.
And I got to be honest, at that time in my life, I wasn't really up to that. I hadn't ever worked in that kind of a situation where I was looking for financing, and
right.
I didn't play in that world.
Tough.
So it was I felt kind of stuck. So one of the things that I noticed though when I was doing that is I saw this guy that was going to bring cars from China. His name's Malcolm Bricklin. I don't know if you've ever heard of Malcolm Bricklin.
I don't think so.
Well, Malcolm at one time made his own cars called the Bricklin SV1, which stood for safety vehicle. It was the predecessor to the DeLorean, actually.
Okay.
You look at it, it had the gold wing doors. It was kind of clunky back in the day. It wasn't very fast, but it looked like a sports car.
Yeah.
But he also was the guy who first brought Subaru into the United States. Subaru of America was founded by Malcolm. And he sold that, and then he moved on to that. And then he also imported the infamous Yugo. $3,500 tin can that rusted really quick. But he, everybody laughs about it, but he sold that company for $90 million. And who knows, it might still be in business today if it didn't take a bunch of bombs in the war over there in Yugoslavia. So that's what actually killed Yugo. Everybody thinks that people stopped buying them. It got bombed, and that's what really killed the company.
Wow.
So anyways, I'm from Detroit. I started talking to car dealers that I knew from Detroit area about Malcolm, because he had this idea of bringing cars from China. I'm thinking, and they were going, well, cars from China? Who the hell wants to buy a car from China? I said, well, he sold a bunch of Yugos out of Yugoslavia. And I said, look around your office and tell me what they make in Yugoslavia that you've got in your office. I said, now go do the same thing and tell me what you got in your office from China. They went, well, okay, well, maybe you've got a point. The fact is, back then, there were like over 100 car manufacturers in China. They were all regional manufacturers, but a number of very large ones also. And one of them, his company was Cherry. So I'm telling all these dealers about it, and they start calling him and investing in him. And so I get a phone call one day. I guess one of the dealers, they were asking one of the dealers how they found out about his effort. They said, well, your guy down in Florida, at the time I was living in Florida. They said, your guy down in Florida told me about it. He said, I don't have a guy in Florida. So they gave him my phone number. So Malcolm called me on the phone. He goes, hey, why don't you come up to New York and talk to me? I want to find out what you've been doing. So I went up there and I sat in on one of their board meetings, actually, and they offered me a job as a director of business development for them, going out and signing up new dealers. It was dealer development, actually.
In the United States?
Yes. Yeah. So my job was then to go around and visit dealerships throughout the country, the owners of the dealerships, and get them interested in helping Malcolm bring cars from China, because it took quite an investment. You're talking about minimum $500-600 million.
Now, what year was this?
Oh God!
About
you have to ask me that. I don't. Geez.
I want to put it in perspective for our audience, so that because we're talking history here. We're making history here.
It was in the first years of the 2000s.
Okay.
2002, 2003, sometime in there.
Okay.
So I started doing this, and I'm traveling around the country. And one of the things that I noticed, I am from Detroit. One of my major customers in Detroit was Ford Motor Company. Chrysler was one of the others. I've been in the Mahogany Row. I've been up and down these buildings, and I know how these companies work. And I noticed, I was watching how Malcolm was working, and I could see that this wasn't going to work the way he was going about it. He was a super ego, hell of a smart guy. I mean, very, very dynamic, great guy to be around, but he just wasn't going to make it. I could see that clearly. And after about 8 or 9 months. And so finally I just said, hey, I'm going to resign. Everybody in the company is on me, calling me on the phone. What do you mean you're going to resign? This is the next big thing in the world. You've got to be part of this. And I went, nope, he's not going to make it. And I don't want my name attached to the failure that I see happening. So I went home, I told my wife, and our printed circuit board business was still running just fine. It wasn't about money. And she says, well, what do you want to do now? You want to just go back into the boards? And I went, I don't think I'm ready to do that yet. She said, well, how much did anybody else that was in the company, it was called Visionary Vehicles, know about China? I said, nobody knew anything about China. I mean, they've only been there twice. I'd been there probably by that time 40 times to China. I knew my way around pretty well. She said, well, why don't you go do it? So I naively went over and parked myself at the Ritz-Carlton in Shanghai and started introducing myself to anybody in the car industry that could speak English. And I eventually
I was going to ask if you learned how to speak Mandarin or Cantonese.
I knew a little bit of Mandarin, but other than to ask for a glass of red wine, I'm pretty much, I can't say much more, Danny.
All right.
So I started asking around. I ended up hooked up with the guy who had just resigned as president of General Motors China. I don't know if you know anything about the history of GM China, but it's a very interesting story. And he said, listen, if you're going to do this, you got to hire this guy I'm telling you to hire. Turns out to be a Chinese guy he was educated in Taiwan and then worked for General Motors in Taiwan and then came to the US, and they put him on the General Motors China team because he could speak Chinese. He was originally from Shanghai, and they wanted him to be part of the development. So he's actually part of the history of GM China. And he had just resigned as director of business development for General Motors China. And his name was Frank Cho. And so I hired Frank to work with me. And we started calling on all the car companies in China. In the interim, Malcolm did fail, as I expected he would. We went back to Chery, the car company that Malcolm was working with, and forged our own deal. Because I had the right people behind me now, we went out, we actually had a pledge from Fidelity for $600 million to help bring those cars from China to the United States. However, while all this is going on, I'm watching Chery at work too, just like I did watching Malcolm.
Right.
And they were also forged a deal with an Israeli company to take cars not to the United States, but to Europe from Chery. And I saw them falling on their face. So I told Fidelity, I said, look, as much as I want to do this, I said, your money is going to be good, throwing good money after bad. And I said, I can't do that to you with a pure heart. So I'm backing out of this one. So I backed out of that too. I could have probably sold my position at that point for millions of dollars, but I knew that if I did that, I was going to be doing it and selling it to somebody that was going to fail. And again, it's just not my way. So I talked to Frank, and Frank says, "Well, listen, I know this company over in Liuzhou, which is another part of China, central China." He said, "They're a partner of General Motors. Why don't we go see what they have, and maybe we can import their little micro trucks into the U.S. for use or whatever." So we went over and we talked to Wu Ling. Wu Ling is part of what would you call it? It was a combination of it was called SGMW, Shanghai Automotive, General Motors, and Wu Ling, which is a pretty big company now. I think one of the bigger in China. And so they're making these tiny little micro trucks. And so we imported a couple of those, and I found people to buy them. And so we started selling them to like parks and recreation users, things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And college campuses, little places where they could use these little tiny micro trucks to do things. Honest to God, you could put these things in the back of a pickup truck. They're so small.
Okay. I think I've seen them.
And then I got the stupid idea of putting an electric motor into this truck and make it an electric, because this is when everybody was talking about the next thing is electric vehicles.
Right.
So the company, working with Wu Ling, we pulled out the engine and transmission and ended up putting an electric motor in, and I started importing those. And around that time, Chrysler had a thing called the Gem car. I don't know if you remember these. They were just like neighborhood runabouts that they would sell in maybe a retirement community. I was living in Florida at the time. There was a place called Sun City and the Villages, big places like 40, 50,000 people in there. And they're all driving around in golf carts. So I set about designing and manufacturing my own version of that. I called it the Smile E, because our design, the front of the car looked like it had a smile on it, and it was electric.
Yeah.
But it was like, you could call it a glorified golf cart, but it had doors and windows that went up and down, windshield wipers. We had to meet Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 500, which meant you had a DOT certified seatbelts, headlights, taillights, brake lights, windshield wipers. Everything in the car had to be DOT certified. Mirrors,
like a regular car.
Yeah. Well, not quite like a regular car, because Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 500 is for vehicles that travel on roads 35 miles per hour or less speed limit.
Okay.
And they're limited to 25 miles per hour legally, but that can be very easily changed to quicker by just a couple changes of a screw, right? So we designed this car and started importing it, and actually did very well on this for a number of years. And then I kind of screwed up my distribution network. I won't say how that happened. I had a dealer group that came to me and said, "Hey, we want to take over the sales of this for you. We're going to have 20 dealers around the country, and we're going to sell 10 to 20 per month at each dealership," which would have really cranked my numbers up.
Right.
And I kind of agreed to go with them. Again, naively, my mistake. I'm not going to blame the dealers group. They never did their job, and basically it shut my company down. So I went to work in. From there, I took a job. Somebody asked me to come work for them in supply chain management in a contract electronic manufacturing role. I ended up as a director with them in supply chain management. And it was an interesting job. I got to learn a lot more. I learned a lot of that when I was building the vehicle, because I had to go through injection molding. I had to do metal forming, all kinds of different things that had to be done. And I learned a lot when I was going through all that. So I use that knowledge in my new position in supply chain management.
Right.
And I did that job for about 6.5 years, and the company was sold to a Chinese conglomerate. And it turned my job from working with a bunch of suppliers into basically sitting and inputting stuff on my computer all day. And so I opted out of that. And from there, I had a friend that was working in the coatings industry, and I had been watching this new technology. And anybody that's watching technology may have heard of this, but I was just studying everything I could read about graphene. And I don't know if you've heard of graphene, Danny. It's a 1 molecule thick material that is stronger than steel and has all kinds of different properties. It can be electrically conductive, thermally conductive. It can do a lot of different crazy stuff. And I always wondered, what could graphene do for the electronics industry? If we could find some way to apply this to the electronics industry in printed circuit boards, possibly using it to form circuits rather than using copper the way they do now, or using it to remove heat from the boards. So I called this friend of mine who was in the coatings industry and a very, very successful guy. And I call him up. I go, Michael, I've been looking at this product called graphene, this new technology. And, I thought you might be the guy that I could call and ask about this. He goes, funny, you should mention that. I happen to be CEO of a company that is making a type of stuff. It's called graphite intercalated compound, which is a graphene-like material. Mm-hmm. And he says, and I'm working with them now. So I eventually just joined them just to try and help them develop a market for this material. And it's pretty interesting stuff. It's a powder that you make from graphene from graphite. And then it's refined in a way that turns it into little flakes. It's so fine that the parts are like microns thin. That's how small they are. It makes flour look like it's got big grains in it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Very, very
fine. Yeah.
So, but when you put that into a coating, it can do different things. It can move heat. It can either remove heat from something, or it could act as a conductor. It can be a conductor, or it can be a thermal barrier.
Right.
So I thought, wow, if you can actually act as a heat conductor, you could put that on a printed circuit board. And if anybody knows the printed circuit board industry, and the electronics industry, they know that these new components are creating gobs of heat. Heat is the biggest problem in the electronics industry today.
Right.
So my idea was to put that graphite intercalated compound powder into a coating that goes on a printed circuit board and act as a giant heat sink to remove the heat from the boards. Because when you get too much heat in it, what it does is it slows down the conductivity of the electrical signals that are going through the circuitry.
Right.
So you've got to remove that heat. So I actually been working on that for 1.5 years, 2 years now. It's a very difficult thing to get past, because really the place where this is most useful is going to be in the military aerospace segment, right?
Right.
And they're very slow to move on to new technologies like this, because when they put something up into space, it's going to be there 20, 30 years, and it's got to stay there for a long time and work. So I'm still at that. At this point, I'm now their VP of business development, and we're working at it, but it doesn't take a lot of my time, because we're in a development stage where companies like SpaceX and them are doing all the testing, and it's going to literally take years to get to a point where they're going to accept all this. So I wanted to find something else to do, and so I went back into printed circuit boards as well. And I'm repping a printed circuit board company that specializes in printed circuit boards for the military aerospace industry, which is somewhere where I have a little bit of expertise. And I'm working at that anyway with my graphene product. So it kind of is just kind of flows. And so here I am, back where I started in 1986. Selling printed circuit boards again and having a blast, and still have the graphene project going.
Yeah, but it's so interesting how you got to know China, how you got to know the areas, the different manufacturers. You have like a wealth of knowledge, and yet you don't speak any Chinese.
Well, it's interesting as hell too, because when I first went over was when I first started working for the printed circuit board company in Hong Kong. Since then, I've been to China. I was counting my passports, because they save all my passport. I know I'm somewhere past 75 trips over there. And where I come from, to the fact that I've been to Thailand, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, I've been to Tunisia, France, Germany, all these places doing business, Dubai. I never in my life would I have dreamt that it would come to that. So it is kind of cool. And,
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah.
And I've been everywhere in China. So it's nice. It's been a great life. I'm still having fun with it. I think I'm one of those guys that they're going to have to carry away someday, because there's no way in hell I'm going to stop having this much fun.
Right. So, okay. So if somebody was going to travel to China, top 3 places to go to.
Ooh, tough. That's tough. My number 1 is Shanghai. I love Shanghai. It's one of the most dynamic cities in the world. It grew up so fast. When I first started going there, their tallest building was 5 stories tall, and today it makes New York look like a podunk town. It really does.
Wow,
it's fascinating. So I would have to put that number 1. I would, much as I don't like the city, I would have to say Beijing number 2, and the reason is just the history. That's where you can go to Tiananmen Square. You can go to the Forbidden City. There's stuff there that you'll see that you're not going to see anywhere else on the planet. So I would make that number 2. And then, while a lot of other people might choose to go where they have the terracotta soldiers and other places that are more popular. And Nanjing, by the way, I'd put somewhere on the list. The place that I really like going more than anything is I took a river trip up the Li River, and it was one of the most fascinating trips I've ever had. It was beautiful. You start in a little town called Guilin, and you go up this river that zigzags through this area where the mountains just go straight up and down. They're and it's so famous in China. It's depicted on, I think, their 20 RMB or 50 RMB dollar bill. It's a very famous area.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And you end up in a place called Yangshuo, which is a little village where the fishermen fish on these bamboo boats standing up, and they have a basket on the back of the boat, and they have a cormorant as like a duck, right? And they raise these ducks from little tiny chicks with rings around their neck to restrict the size of their necks, so that their necks are very narrow. And what that means is that fish cannot eat, or that bird cannot eat a big fish. They can only eat tiny little fish.
Yeah.
But their skill is catching big fish. So the fishermen with a net get all these little fish, and they feed the duck or the cormorant. The duck goes out and catches a big fish, brings it back, puts it in the basket. The fisherman feeds them the small fish. So they become interdependent on one another.
Oh, that's so funny.
And when you go to China and you say you're going to buy fresh fish, that fish is still swimming. You're not buying dead fish. They call our fresh fish dead fish. So then you get, and then when you go to shore, you said they look like dish pans just sitting there with little bubblers to aerate the water, and all these fish swimming around, and that's how they get them to market. It's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, so that's really cool. I mean, you can't get any fresher than that, right?
Yeah, but it's interesting to go through that terrain down that river, watching these fishermen fish, and when you get to Yangshuo, it's all rice paddies in the hills, the things that look like picturesque, and those are things that you can only look at on the screen most of the time. You don't get to do those things. I think I was my wife was with me. I think we were the only 2 Americans on that boat. So
wow,
it was an interesting time. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't understand anybody else, but you're making it through there because you guys only know English.
You find your way through, though. I found traveling around the world, you don't have to really speak everybody's language to get along and actually have fun with each other. I remember I was training a guy to work for me in Hong Kong one time. This is going back to, oh God. This was before China took over Hong Kong. And there was a general strike that shut down business because they were scared about going back to becoming Chinese, right?
Right.
And so I said, well, listen, we're stuck here. There's nothing we can do for the weekend. We might as well just go find something fun. So I said, let's go hike. There was a fishing island out somewhere in the South China Sea, not too far out. So I said, let's go take a ferry. I think it was Lantau Island or something. Let's go take a ferry out there and just go hike the island. So we're over on the Hong Kong Island. We started in Tsimsha-Tsui on the mainland side and go over to Hong Kong Island. And I'm looking for where the ferries are, and I can't find it. And there's a traffic cop out there directing traffic in the street. So I decided to go out and ask him how to find the ferry. And he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Chinese, but I got him to understand what I was looking for by using hand motions. And by the time we were done, he was laughing, I was laughing. You know, I'm kind of patting him on his shoulder. He's hitting me back. And I get back over to the side of the street where this guy I was training was. He goes, what the hell? How do you talk to people like that? I say, hey, we're just people. You know, you figure it out.
You just figure it out, and have fun with it. Absolutely.
We found the ferry. We went over to the island. We hiked the island. Had lunch over there and got back without speaking Chinese. So
that's so cool. Those are like really cool adventures. I mean, you got to look at it this way. We only live once. You might as well squeeze every ounce of experience of life that we can.
Yeah, you know, that reminds me of when I went over to Japan one time. I had gone to a wedding in Hong Kong and then decided the guy who was getting married was one of the guys from the printed circuit board company who is still today one of my friends. And he invited me to his wedding in Hong Kong. And then he invited my mother because he had been at my parents' home. He said, well, why don't you come too? So my mother was invited and I wasn't married at the time. I had a girlfriend. So I took my girlfriend and my mother. And we went to the wedding and we had a great time, of course. And then we went to Japan and we get to Japan and we were in Tokyo and I wanted to take the bullet train to Kyoto because I always loved the idea of going to Kyoto. It's a very traditional city. So we get into the train station in Tokyo and nobody speaks English and there's no English characters on any of the signs. It's all kanji and we need to find a way to get on the right train to end up in Kyoto. And my mother and my girlfriend were scared. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Are we going to get lost? And I just told them, I said, listen, when you're traveling, you have to look at this as an adventure and make it fun. This is like a puzzle. How do we get from here to there when you have no way to figure it out? And that you're right. That's one of the great experiences and journeys of life.
Yeah. I mean, I've done traveling and I've sat there and asked for ice and it's just like make cubes and freeze and, you know, just make signs and then, you know, cause let's say in Europe, they don't drink cold drinks. The beer's warm and, you know, like nobody puts ice in their soda and water. And they're like, wait, we're Americans. We like it cold.
I want my ice.
Yeah, exactly. And then they finally understand. And they put this one little tiny ice cube in your glass and like, no. Give me
Where's your favorite place to have gone, Danny?
You know, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I've been to like every place I've been to from South America to Europe to the Polynesian Islands. They all offer a different flavor. So whether it's the culture or the music or the food or the sightseeing that we do, they're all different. Just experiencing each one is nice. You know, getting out of the country of the United States and going to almost any other country. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you've done a lot of traveling too. The pace of life is totally different.
Yeah.
People slow down, you know, that you see them in cafes, they're drinking wine or they have their afternoon get-togethers every day.
I'm going to caution you on that though, because they're not like that everywhere. The Chinese, I would say, are the most industrious people I've ever seen anywhere on the planet. They make us look like we're in slow motion here.
Oh, okay. So I haven't been to the Asian countries.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I worked for the contract manufacturer I worked for was originally owned by the French, so I was in Paris a lot for them because that's where the headquarters was. Yeah, and everything slowed down a little bit. And by the way, I love Paris. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. The architecture, just cool.
Yeah, Yeah, but and you go like I travel to Mexico a lot. I love the pace down there. I love the people. It's just warm. Thailand was the same way a little bit. The people in Thailand are the sweetest people I've ever met. But you get to China and they are on high speed, man. They're in fifth gear all the time, and we have no idea. But one of the things that I look back at my whole career when you talk about China that I have mixed emotions. You hear today the Chinese are our enemy and everything. We shouldn't have any enemies. Everybody is different. We need to accept people for what they are and recognize that we might not agree with their politics, but for whatever reason, they're agreeing with it enough to live with it. So we need to live with them. And when I first started going to China and you would go through a factory, and I think my first time over there was like probably mainland China, Shanghai. My first time was 1995.
Right.
I'd go in a factory and the workers would be in there and they never even looked up at you hardly. They're doing their job. They've got a grim look on their face. They were still wearing Chairman Mao like uniforms back in the day, and no smiles, and just task oriented. They had to do their job. Most people were riding bicycles, some scooters. You never hardly saw many cars back then. And then today you go into China and that there are young people in the factories and they're going to the Starbucks. They've got a cell phone on their side. They've got a scooter or a car in the parking lot. They're waving and smiling at you. They're having better lives. And so much as yes, I've seen it affect the quality of life here in the United States. I have to say part of me is proud to say that I got to be even just a tiny little part of seeing these young people have a better life in that other part of the world where there's 1.3 billion people and they deserve the same shot at a beautiful life as we do,
Right. And they're working for it, right? They're pushing for that. And
hey, when they go to work in the morning, they don't go to work just for their paycheck. They go to work for their country. They have a different mindset than you and I do. We go to do our job. You're thinking about, hey, how am I going to take care of my family? I got to get money in my pocket. I got to do this. I got to do that. And they don't seem to have that same thing. But the one thing they do that's different than the United States is they really respect their education. They go to school at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. They don't get home till 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and they've got 3 or 4 hours of homework every single night. Every night. And the parents are pushing them to do well. So we better give some credit to these people in these other parts of the world and quit thinking we're so high and mighty. And, I want to see us do better. When you look at some of the things that are going on in politics today, like these tariff wars supposedly that we're having, we need to try and understand them. And to that, I will say this about the tariff thing. Yeah. I've been watching China for a long time. I had to take measuring tools and different things over to China to do the work that I was trying to get accomplished over there because they didn't have all the tools at the time. Getting anything into China, it costs you a fortune. And the tariffs and the restrictions for trade to the American people in China is outlandish. You don't see any made in America cars. You don't see any made in America anything in China, period.
Because so expensive to import then, sounds like.
Correct, because the tariffs are incredible. And then you look around the world, even like into Europe, you try and take an America, you go to Germany, you go to England, you go to Paris, you don't see any American made cars there because once again, the tariffs are too high. Even Mexico, you don't see American made cars in Mexico because there's no tariff, but there's an 18% VAT tax, which is really a hidden tariff. Everybody in the world has been doing that to our country for decades, which has killed our manufacturing base. And we need to recover some of it at least, because any country that loses its manufacturing base becomes a dead country. You have to have manufacturing.
So there's some method to our president's madness to
There is.
and clean that up. And that's a good thing because it hasn't been done before.
It just has to be characterized properly. They're not characterizing it. It's not him waging a war. It's him responding to the war that's been waged against us for decades.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And I understand a lot of people don't like him. I get it. If that's what your gig is, don't like him. But understand that we need a chance in this country to regain some of that back so that our working families can survive. And, you know, when I grew up, my dad worked and my mom didn't for a long time. And then she had to eventually. And now it takes two people in the family to work just to keep food in your belly and the lights on in the house, right?
That's a totally different change from many years ago when one person, and it changes the whole dynamic of the family when both parents have to work versus when your mom can be home raising the children. But that's a topic for another day because we can spend a whole day talking about.
Yes, you could. But anyway, so that's kind of been my journey. And you know, today I'm focused on two things professionally, and one is my graphite intercalated compound. It's still one of the best things to remove heat from printed circuit boards. It eventually will replace the copper circuitry when people finally put their thinking cap on and
right.
Because you'll be able to digitally just print the circuits just by putting the ink on instead of etching away copper. And then selling my printed circuit board there's a company that I represent in Michigan called Calumet Electronics. They're located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, so they're very competitive because they don't have the same costs that most of the high-tech companies located here in California have.
No. Now, as we wrap up our interview, what's coming up? What's exciting coming up in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think the most exciting thing right now, because I've been in electronics and in the auto industry both, is really, there's two things. One is the change of this dramatic changeover to electric vehicles and automotive and watching that. But artificial intelligence is a thing that we all should be aware of. People aren't grasping, but this is going to be world changing in ways most people don't understand. It's going to replace almost all of the engineers. You think about it, you'll be able to plug in what you need done in AI and it will have your answers for you in seconds, where you might have a team of engineers working on it for months. So
game changer there.
The number one job for people who are of high school education is a driver right now in this country. They're going to go away because self-driving is going to happen. It's going to take a while, but 20 years from now, 25 years from now,
it's coming.
There's not going to be any jobs. So if you're a young guy and this is what you're looking at for your future, I think people need to start really paying attention to the trades, because those jobs are not going to be eaten up by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence isn't going to fix your refrigerator. It's not going to fix your plumbing, and it's not going to fix your electrical wiring in your home. Building things is still going to be required. So those people have a future, but I think everybody should be watching artificial intelligence. And I think in the next 6 months, you're going to start seeing more and more of it take over.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I think you're absolutely right. And thanks for sharing such an interesting story on your path going back and forth from one world to another, one country to another. Now, if somebody who is listening to us would want to get a hold of you, how could they get a hold of you?
Well, I can be reached at bill@PCB, like printed circuit board, .biz, bill@pcb.biz. Hey, if you want to call me, call me. I talk to anybody. My telephone number is 949-922-4507. I'm an open book, Danny. And you know what? The one thing you should never do is close a door in front of something, because you never know what you may be opening it to.
You never know. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for coming on. And to our audience, please go to ocpowerplayers.com and follow us on your favorite channel. Thanks so much, Bill.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So let me record the last bit. Okay, so we're going to publish in about 3 weeks. Will take us to publish. We're going to send you some shorts so that if you're on social media, you can go ahead and post. Really cool story. I'm getting great results with the podcast, and it's growing, and people are listening. They're listening on their cars, going to work. It's just kind of blowing up. So I'm having a great time doing this. But our core business is working with business owners such as yourselves in the alternative investment space, so primarily multifamily, where we're able to get them double-digit returns and great tax benefits. Is that something you would be willing to look at, and I can show you what we do?
Yeah, of course, Danny.
Okay, perfect. So then that'll take about half an hour, and I can schedule you now. Let me see. Let me pull up my calendar real quick.
Yeah, let me pull up mine too.
Okay, so I have next week, I have the 9th or the 10th or the week after that.
Let's see. I've got a pretty busy week next week. The following week would probably be better.
So I have 15th, 16th, or 17th.
Let's go for the 15th.
Okay, and you put 2:33 or 5.
Let's see, 15th at 2. My problem is my big calendar. I'd have to change screens, and I'm afraid to do that here. Let's go for 2:30 right now.
Okay.
And then one of the things when we're done with this, and I'm putting this on my thing. When we're done with this, make sure I have a way to contact you in case that there's something that I've just gone through a big switchover because my computer, my brand new computer, had died.
Nice.
It crashed.
Yeah.
And so I lost a lot of stuff, and I'm just getting all of my calendars synced together. So
okay.
So
no worries.
It'll have a link.
It'll have a link. I'll send you a calendar invite.
Okay, great.
It'll have a link on there that if you need to reschedule, you can go ahead and move it around.
Okay, great. That's perfect.
Also within that, I'm sending you a link to YouTube where I talk a little bit about my background, so you can get to know me a little bit more on who I am and how I got started in the business, and then you can listen to that before our call. That would be great.
Okay, and I've got you for Tuesday the 15th at 2:30 right now.
Perfect. Deal.
Excellent.
Very good. Bill,
thanks, Danny.
Thank you so much. I had a great time with you.
Have a happy day.
You as well. Thanks so much.
I always do. Thanks.
All right. I like that. Very good. All right.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.